Artificial intelligence is everywhere right now. It's in the headlines. It's being built into software tools, and it's showing up in more and more conversations about engineering, manufacturing, quality, and process improvement. But there's a big problem. A company can buy the software, a team can attend the training. Everyone can walk away impressed by what AI might be able to do. And then, a few weeks later, very little actually changes. The tool is there, the potential is still there, but the habits never formed. And that matters directly to reliability. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to Reliability Matters. In electronics manufacturing, reliability doesn't come from good intentions. It comes from repeatable processes, disciplined execution, clear documentation, good decision making, and the ability to recognize problems before they become failures in the field. That's where AI can become more than just another interesting tool. Used properly, AI may be able to enhance workflows such as reviewing ECOs, engineering change orders, and identifying downstream processes, documentation, material, or inspection impacts, analyzing AOI, SPI, test, and process data to detect recurring defect patterns, supporting root cause analysis by organizing failure data, inspection results, and corrective action history, monitoring process drift in areas such as reflow, cleaning, stencil printing, placement, and environmental conditions, assisting with corrective action reports, customer responses, and internal documentation, capturing tribal knowledge from meetings, shift reports, troubleshooting notes, and past problem-solving activity. Those are all reliability-related activities. They touch the way products are designed, built, inspected, documented, corrected, and improved. But AI only helps if it becomes part of the way work actually gets done. My guest today is Sean Patterson, author of the printed circuit design and fabrication article, Why Your AI Training Isn't Sticking. Sean argues that AI adoption is not really a training problem, it's a habit problem. In other words, the goal isn't simply to teach people what AI can do. The goal is to connect AI to the work people are already doing, such as preparing for meetings, reviewing engineering change orders, working through technical questions, or organizing complex problems. For those of us focused on reliability, that distinction is important. AI doesn't replace engineering judgment, process knowledge, or verification, but when used properly, it may help strengthen the behaviors that support reliability, asking better questions, capturing knowledge, reducing overlooked details, and improving the consistency of technical decision-making. So today we're going to talk to Sean about why AI training often fails to stick, how small triggers can turn occasional use into practical habits, where AI can fit into engineering and manufacturing workflows, and how companies can approach AI in a way that is useful, responsible, and directly connected to reliability. And it all begins right now. Stick around.
Welcome to Reliability Matters, a podcast for the electronic assembly industry. Each episode covers topics related to reliability, best practices, and environmentally responsible assembly techniques, with insights from experts across the electronic assembly industry. Now, here's your host, Mike Conrad.
Sean Patterson, welcome to Reliability Matters. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Thanks, Mike. Same to you.
Okay, so let's, as I mentioned in the introduction, let's talk about your article a bit. Your article makes the point that AI training often fails because people learn the tool, but they don't build the habit. Yeah. What are you seeing that led you to come to that conclusion?
I would say the past 30 or 40 years of new technologies coming out of technology companies into non-technology companies, right? It's not just AI, it's a history of patterns that we've had, whether it's, HubSpot, Salesforce, ERP, X, Y, and Z, all these kind of systems that have been largely put out into the business world. I like to say leaders sort of buy the gym membership and expect everybody to get fit, right?
Wait, you actually have to go?
Yeah, you actually, it's exactly.
Well, that explains a lot, Sean.
Well, you get the analogy. It's always happened, and I left corporate America to go do this as a full-time job because I'm an operations C-suite guy for a long period of time, and just we tend to not introduce new technology in an appropriate way, largely in any business, quite frankly, but really these sort of non-technology businesses buying these other things. And you wind up, leadership, one, doesn't understand what they're buying, largely, right? Because this whole sales process, and you truly get, you want the results of what you see, but you actually understand what you're buying. And that has been just a historic problem. And then sort of once you buy it, then the staying power to actually see it through to integration is a very long time. And we just don't have that kind of attention span. And you'll talk about, well, you have these ERP integrations that take 5 to 10 years. I mean, that's one, it's pretty ridiculous that it takes us that long. And two, it's not, we lose track of it. We lose interest. We wind up using 10% of what we were sold. And I just didn't want that to happen again with AI, because not only is the business going to get behind, now people's careers are going to get behind, because it does take time and education, followed by doing that education and actually using it every day. And we can't even do that with the gym, right? So when we know at least that part's good for us, we can argue whether AI is going to be good for us or not. But even when it is good for us, we tend not to form and stick to that habit. And it's tough, no matter what it is, to form a habit.
Yeah, there's some interesting comparisons to other evolutionary technology. In terms of adoption speed, AI is moving at the speed of sound, where other adoption processes you mentioned took 5 to 10 years. And that's both good and bad. It became, within the public consciousness and awareness, it became ubiquitous, and just in terms of awareness, not in terms of application, in a year or two, which is probably historic, right? I once read an article about adoption rates, and it went back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines, basically started off as, farm equipment, and then, worked its way into locomotives and things like that. Electricity. I was shocked to learn that it took years, probably close to a decade, to electrify America, not to mention other countries. And it started off, for the elite in highly populated urban areas, and then eventually spread. I mean, there was more than a decade that went by, well more than a decade that went by before, almost every home was connected to some kind of source of electricity. I am old enough to remember when the PC came out in the 80s-ish, late 70s to some degree, and then IBM, with their main PC. And it took years for companies to adopt it. Fax machines were faster, but still took a few years. And the internet, I think we got our first website at my company in 1995 or 1996. And back then it was a little bit of a novelty. Email was a little bit of a novelty. We still relied on faxes mostly. But then, now I look at AI, and 3 years ago, I don't think OpenAI existed, at least not in the public consciousness. And, look at them now. Who would have thought we would have had a leading AI technology named Claude? Okay, we got to talk about who's responsible for these names, because I think they're lame. They're totally lame. I want my AI to have a more intelligent name. I want it to be like Stanley or something, but not Claude. Come on. Or Einstein even. But anyway, I go down rabbit holes. Sorry about that. But I do think that there's this dichotomy of super fast historic adoption rate and ignorance all mixed in at the same time. And I think one of the unfortunate things is that we call this technology AI for artificial intelligence. And I think that is slightly a misnomer. And that also breeds fear and suspicion and skepticism, because artificial, I mean, nothing artificial is supposed to be good. Artificial ingredients in your food, artificial sweeteners. We're trained to think artificial means somehow we're being duped. Yet, I think we can keep the acronym AI, but I think we should change the word artificial to acquired. Because what's artificial about it? It learned the way we learn, only at at thousands of times greater speed, with virtually no memory capacity. It just keeps going and going and going, no limit on the capacity. And it basically knows everything it knows because it read everything we know and have documented since, scribe days. And, anything that's been digitized and put online, it's read it. And it understands the contextual value of it. So maybe the artificial part is it's forming conclusions based on data it has memorized. But then so do we. We go to school, we read all the textbooks, and then we start forming our own conclusions. So we're as artificial as it is, and we're not artificial. So I think acquired intelligence would be a better terminology for it. It would at least demote skepticism and fear a little bit. Does that make sense in your world?
Yeah, I definitely align to a lot of the things you just mentioned there. This is the technology is happening faster than ever. It's the first time really where the groundswell is actually coming from the individual and not either the government or business top down. And there is absolutely this problem with, I actually have schools that are my clients because we can't even get this to educating to students because we can't even get through the teacher and the administration first. Right?
Yeah.
So I look at, we don't call ourselves consultants anymore. We're educators and accelerators because we try to go and eventually partners. We try to be on for the long-term 3 to 5 year contracts of sort of like the new IT MSP equivalency, managed services, but for technology in general. And that technology is somewhat software, but it's also decision-making support and things like that. So it touches a lot more. But there is this, I call it naive snake oil salesmanship. There's always going to be the snake oil thing, but there's a lot of naive ones out there where somebody gets a really good experience and they just go shouting from the mountaintops. And the problem is most people get these really cool experiences on a statistical basis and then think it's something that you can actually use repeatably, and it's not. There's a lot of sort of viral things that happen and then they go away. For example, some people on here may have heard of Clawbot. That kind of has gone away after it did a bunch of havoc. And it's because people don't understand and take the curiosity to actually understanding the technology itself. And, that's what our business does, but it's really come from this place of understanding the why. These are really just next word predictors. They really are. Whatever you'd like to call it. They know the patterns of the English language. They do not know facts. They don't know facts. They've read facts, but they actually don't know them in a factual manner, just as much as they are large language underscore models, and this applies to your audience. Large language, I did not say large math. They do not understand the concepts of math. Now, they can write a computer programming language in order to do deterministic math. That's the end around. But they don't think of 2 + 2 = 4
the way we do.
Number basis. They think of it as the character 2. And even the character 2 and the word written out 2 + 2 in full text aren't even the same patterns inside of the AI. So they don't think of it that way. And that's where I see a lot of people getting in trouble. There's aside from the poor marketing aspect of the entire industry, and particularly the ones that are doing these generative AI systems, I don't want to blame the rest of AI, which is a much larger sphere than what everybody's calling AI now. That's generative AI. Sort of generative AI is not going to solve cancer. The rest of AI will, but generative AI is accessible to many people. Unfortunately, the technology companies have put a lot of cars on the road without anybody getting a license to use these cars
That's a good analogy.
to cause problems. And there's really not, I mean, more people are coming around to our approach, which is educate first. Don't buy our AI, learn your AI. And it's because people get a really cool experience. But then they ask for something else and they don't get it. And this is the first technology you've ever seen in our lives where people impose their expectations on what the technology should do. Instead of learning what the technology should do, they instead treat this blank, cursor thing as in, oh, this can go solve world hunger. And you know what? Especially like OpenAI will say, yes, let's go do that. Nobody's ever thought about that in the history of humankind. You and I are going to solve world hunger together. And it's, sycophantic in that way, but it's also trained to be sycophantic in order to actually do the things you're asking as a human. You can't train it on the negative side, or it would never, actually do the actual outcome you're asking.
Yeah, you'll ask it a question and it'll respond, Sean, that's a stupid question. It's not going to do that. It's also trained to please its customer. So
correct.
I can't tell you how many times I've actually asked it to stop doing it. And it, for the most part, it remembers. Technically, it doesn't remember, but somehow in there, it knows the style in which you like to be, quote unquote, spoken to. And I would ask it a question. Say I'm doing research on Sean Patterson, for the show. Oh, Sean would make a great guest. Like, okay, calm down. Or that's a very good question. Or if I call it out on something where it's not accurate, good catch, right? So, I mean, it's trained. It's like certain food groups with added sugar. It's designed to addict you. It's designed to hook you, create the dopamine, and all that. I think there's a little bit of that in the algorithm because
I think so.
It wants you to come back. Its model is based on you using it more. It's kind of like that drug dealer that gives you a
little bit
first hit for free, and it feels good, and allegedly, and you want to go back for more. And I think the same strategy was built into the platform.
I think it's a strategy is an outcome. It's a necessary requirement to have where, if you actually say no a bunch of times to your AI, particularly if you're doing coding kind of stuff, I say on the other side of the consumerism wall that many people are stuck at right now. Many people are sort of stuck in the ChatGPT interface, and ChatGPT is still not the one that we would recommend, right? We're still Claude, have been for about 2 years. We've been recommending
and Claude is Anthropic, right? That's the
Claude is Anthropic, and then different models, Opus and Sonnet and Haiku. And I've been pushing that one for 2 years. I'm not on the payroll or anything. It's just the results are obvious to me. There are a lot of it's the Wild West on the internet. It's very hard to actually see the forest through the trees on all sides of the argument. So it really comes down to individual use. But they are trained this way. And so when you're doing longer running tasks that you're going for 5, 10, 20, 30 hours, if you bake in no like sort of upfront where you're like correcting it, no, there's enough negative what are called tokens in there that will actually sort of the equivalency of making it unsure of itself that will bail out of something that would have run for 20 hours is now running for 10 because it's coming back and saying, is this okay? And checking in with you. And so, you have to watch out for that. It turns out positive side of things like thank you and that kind of stuff is a little more irrelevant because it's already trained to the positive side of things. And it's done that way again, so that it actually is carrying out the task you're asking it to do. And an outcome of that is this sycophantic engagement thing, the dopamine kind of hits, which we know these companies will definitely take advantage of from probably an ad consumerism front, and then suck everybody in, and then you got to stop there. But there is AI you can do on the other side of the wall. Like I said, it's the very same models. It's the same pricing, at least for now. But it really takes a sort of a guide and a mentor to get there, or you're going to unless you have, hours a day to figure out everything, you sort of need an educational approach to that. And it's not copying people's prompts, right?
Right.
Copying prompts has zero competitive advantage. One, two, nobody's there to help you with the second response or the first
Right.
response back.
Right.
And your very language, your adjectives, your adverbs, the way you speak and understand and everything affects the outcomes.
Yes.
And so you really need to train yourself in combination with understanding technology. And that goes back to just the principles. And the good news is, no matter what system you choose at the end of the day, the principles are based on how current series of large language models are trained, and understanding the why, so that you can better, I'll say, engineer your approach to this. And I think a lot of people on your podcast would be interested more in that. There's too much chatting. You shouldn't chat your AI. You need to engineer your use of AI to get one prompt with the outcome you want.
Yeah.
If you have to go and chat for a second outcome, or to drive it to the outcome you want, you're not.
That's you, not it. Right.
Correct. You
That's
need
you.
to blame yourself first. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you're a manager of this sort of intern that you hired because they're going to be the best protege you've ever had in your life. But any good manager on day one of having that intern there, which is really, these AI are generally like Groundhog Day, especially if you're just in the chat world only, not on your computer. You need to get your AI onto your computer. But if you're just in this chat world, it's Groundhog Day. A good manager would realize if you ask something from your intern and they deliver it to you on day one of the job and you didn't get what you wanted, a really good manager should say, did I communicate incorrectly to this intern? Because they're just new here. Like, what did I do to not meet them where they're at? And that's sort of like a way to handle AI a little bit less getting pissed off at the technology. Because again, this can do anything. Sorry, people impose really that it can do anything, and it can't. And so you have to learn what those use cases are, or the sycophant nature will draw you down a line of getting things wrong and you don't know it. And then also in a place where it's really not delivering value.
Right.
That's not, not what it is. And I think most people that would be listening to your podcast most likely need to actually be taking these things and doing software with them and not chatting through it.
Yeah.
Reliability is a numbers based thing, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't ask it to figure out whatever the heat dissipation is. Like, if you chat your way through that, you will be wrong.
Yeah.
Like, flat out. Now, can you create an entire, can you recreate what you need to do for like polar kind of software? Yeah, you can. If you want to have that savings or apply something more bespoke for your company, it's not, differential pairs is not, it's not rocket science in terms of like, it wasn't just invented. There's years and years of history to go back, and you can go all the way back to the textbook and every study that's ever been done on it. And you can get a better answer, I think, out of this today. But you have to go and actually do that and do the actual mathematical calculations to get your outcome. You cannot chat your way there, though AI will make you think you can.
Yeah. I used to code back in the day. I learned basic coding in high school in the 70s.
Basic? Or
Basic.
Fortran?
No, literally basic. Not Fortran, not Cobalt, not RPG. Basic. And when I started my company 34 years ago, the programming language from the embedded controller we were using was a dialect of BASIC. It was called, I think they called it CAM BASIC or something, but it was basically BASIC. And I'm like, ooh, I kind of know BASIC, right? So I was able to write the code for it. And like every programmer today has heard this more times than they care to admit. But in the rule of coding, garbage in, garbage out. The problem with software is it does exactly what you tell it to do, no more, no less. That doesn't always get applied to AI, particularly in the chat world, because sometimes what you get out is not what you asked, or it was based on what you asked, and then elaborated on and widened, and I think we all forget, particularly in the chat world, right below the box where you enter your prompt, it says it makes mistakes. It might be wrong. Check.
Right.
Check. I think and it's small font. It's kind of gray on white, so it's not like a super amount of contrast, but the people know. In electronics manufacturing, we're used to repeatable processes, documented procedures, controlled workflows, all of that. Why do you think AI adoption often gets treated more casually than other process tools?
One, because leadership doesn't even know what it is. So I think there's that.
So
I
it's a
think we have
top-down. At least in this case, it's
yeah,
top-down.
yeah, because people will push on the wrong places. I mean, this is the first technology where you ever sort of see like the board saying, "Oh, you need to put this in." The CEO is like, "I got to put this in," and they delegate it all the way down. And you ask the people that just delegated all this stuff down, "Okay, show me your engagement with AI," and it doesn't exist, or it exists at this very hobbyist level, and so they can wind up putting pressure on the wrong places.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one, right? I believe that it's a take the hill campaign from we need to adopt AI, but that involves also everybody learning, and then you get a grassroots buildup. But the grassroots um, campaign to create to force the demand that we need to do AI just won't exist. So you really need a leader to be humble enough to learn this technology and drive down. This is where we can go, but then everybody at the bottom level has to learn how to do it, and you have to build up your AI system, because what the main thing I see is if leaders do take the top down approach, then they also try to buy software top down and try to impose it. That's just ERP 2.0, so it just doesn't work. And this is an accessible technology, but you do have to actually understand what's going on there. And so people will tend to use this for where, again, it's this whole cars without licenses, is show me who's actually going and learning truly how these things operate, to understand they're just next word predictors, they're not factual outcomes. You need to treat it as somebody that understands English, and then give it the source information and say only operate from within here in order to get your 99% guaranteed outcome. It's a probabilistic system. And so I do think it's some level of people not knowing what it should be used for, and that can come from leadership poking on it in a different in areas that they don't understand yet. And so I like to say, the adoption of AI is not something you can delegate.
Yeah.
Whether that is within the company or you unto yourself, trying to think that you can just copy and paste the world to where you're learning this technology. It's not. You got to go to night school, if you will.
Yeah. You talk about triggers as a way to make AI part of someone's routine. Now, that sounds like that can be used, the trigger thing can be used to get anyone into any type of routine. It sounds like a basic teaching technique. Can you explain what a trigger is in this context and why it matters?
Yeah. So some of it is definitely around forming the habit, and then the other part is automation around said habit, right? And so it can be even simple as like, I have my phone here. The third button on most iPhones is programmable to something else. And so when I push I have to do the face thing here, but mine goes right to Claude.
Nice.
So it's really about reducing friction in many cases.
Yeah.
And I have, in order for the better part of 2 years, when I was really learning to use this stuff before it became popular, circa like 2022 or so, I wrote on a sticky note, the fax machine equivalency of today, right? How can AI help me with this? And put that sticky note hanging on my computer monitor just above where the X is on Windows. So I would annoyingly at least have to engage with it on occasion, right? And that's sort of like another way to kind of engage with it. But once you do have AI that you're able to use on a repeated outcome, so for instance, email assessment to understand, did I respond to everything I should? Everything that's important to me, did I respond to it? So I won't call it a spam filter. I'll call it like a raise up response filter. It's the other side. It's like the important one.
The opposite, yeah.
But you're doing it with language. And so something like that, in order to actually get the engagement, do you really want to sit there and trigger it every time, or can you have it run at 8 a.m. and noon and stuff like that? So you can do triggers based on a schedule. You can also do triggers based on one thing to another. So say you have that 8 a.m. thing that's looking for your unresponded to emails, but at the same time, you're iterating over your emails anyways. And if one of them happens to be like a new client lead, can you then trigger another automation workflow that is now putting them into a nurture campaign or something like that, right? The difference of shifting as you learn things from equipment where you're sending out, we typically pull data from our equipment, right? It's usually a pull versus push system.
Yep.
You can go into most manufacturing equipment, whether they're fully IoT and connected, still save log files, and you can put systems on your own system that you own, and sense for whenever that log file gets updated and grab it automatically and send it for processing, right? Processing through code, not just direct AI stuff, right?
Right.
So it's about kind of creating those triggers for both engagement as well as getting it a part of the system, because
So
people will.
we're talking human triggers and automated triggers, equipment-based triggers. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Hadn't
you
thought
want to
of
get
that.
the part of it's to get the human out of the loop. If not, you're just going to be
Yeah.
an orchestrator
Setting
of
yourself
these
up
things.
for failure if you're going to not take the
Right.
human out of the loop in terms of adoption and changing opinion and overcoming fear and all that stuff, because we're human. That's what we do. we, we create all that in our head.
Yeah, I mean, so and you don't need. I have one around here. So here's an ESP32 sensor with an accelerometer and a compass, and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. So you're able to create IoT sensors, right? So you have a pump. Everybody kind of sells these things on their own systems. Oh, get yourself electrified. I mean, for $10, you too can now program this. Anybody to sort of go on the outside of your air compressor unit and sense it's running or not. You can also sense pre-failures and all that kind of stuff. But you can start to light up parts of your factory without $30,000 upgrades to every single piece of equipment you
Right.
have, because that's what they're selling from the companies. You can start to get ambient sensing going on for things that are important to you, right? Now with AI, those things are accessible to be able to do programming, and just the idea is really just language to get there. People kind of shy away a little bit from the code word, the word being, oh, you can code with AI. Well, everyone, if you've used an AI system at all, congratulations, you're now a software developer. Like, that is it. You said hi, you have programmed it statistically to respond back to you with some way, right?
A greeting of some sort. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
You program. That's the response. It did not exist until you said that.
Yeah.
You start to eventually evolve those use cases to fully, full blown what we would think of as software. But that's only the intermediary step. When we get people to start to really, say again, code. People think about that too much.
Sure.
We have people making dashboards, for instance, right? That's what everybody wants to do initially. Oh, make a dashboard. That's great. It's a necessary stop. But here's the thing, and it's kind of just what we talked about there, is the dashboard is to keep the human in a loop still. The dashboard is, you're putting up these dashboards so you as a person can go in and see what's going on, but largely you're trying to find things that are out of whack so you can actually adjust them. And so this necessary layover that everybody kind of has to go through in a development process for their own eventually needs to realize that's not really what AI is doing. You're shifting your cost, or really your screen time from, say, Outlook.com now to, I'm going to read my emails through Claude Cowork or something like that. You're still keeping that human there, and you only want to have the human in where the human's applying value. And value means whatever it means to individual companies, right? Some, just that face-to-face value of salesmanship and customer service, those external things I think are really important on the human aspect. Some people still, will value other different things that others won't. And so you shouldn't be automating a way where you believe you're adding value to your process, right? But where the places where you're not, you should look to, how do I get this to an actual agentic behavior? And that takes time and learning, and not just, if I tie it back to this whole gym analogy, you can show up on January 1st and learn how to use the weights from, the instructor, because you made some New Year's resolution the day before. Showing up on January 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, etc., is way harder than showing up on the first day and learning how to use the weights. That's one. Two, humans do not learn everything in one sitting.
Right.
It's the reason we have education that goes on for so long. Our trainings are actually purposely broken up over a minimum of 12 weeks for the first. And it's not because I can't teach everything in 2 days. I can. Nobody will learn it.
You won't have retention. And
Yeah. And we've been doing this forever, by the way. That's why I think also a lot of software has also failed, because we say, oh, let's have the onboarding training class, and then that's it. and then
Yeah.
it's on individuals. And at least AI can help you use AI. But as you sort of learn, just so that you could absorb it on day one, showing up is much harder. The next thing is that as time goes on, new equipment comes out, so you got to learn how to use that. And you start to understand your body, right? Oh, my muscles are sore, I got to back off, or it's summertime, I want to bulk up, or something like that. You start to learn your body, and that starts to build and diffuse out even to your nutrition and everything else. And so, it really is a really good gym analogy at the end of the day. I think maybe all training has been that way.
Yeah.
Just beware doing that, not beware trying to run too fast with AI without actually understanding what it is, because you will make decisions that you didn't even know were incorrect. It's not, you can't outsource the thinking. It just knows the next word.
Sure.
It is an English major. maybe that's the way to say it. You have a really good English major that turns out you can get them to figure out other stuff if you give them the other books, even if they read the book before.
On a side note, really nothing to do with reliability. I interviewed Dr. I forget his name a few episodes ago, and he's a PhD in Africa, an African in Africa, and his thesis, what his mission is to warn against using Western designed AI in places where there are dramatic cultural differences, because it is not aware in the same native manner. It is aware of Western ideals and communication strategies and all that. And it is little nuances. That's his whole point is, AI is failing other countries where the culture is radically different. Now, eventually it will catch up, obviously.
Sure.
It'll normalize and adjust. But it's almost the equivalent of, and this is just an example, it's not literal. There's British English and American English. And we're, separated by a common language. But we kind of know what we mean. Although we say certain words differently, we say certain, we put sentences together differently and things like that. But or people that come from another country and learn English sometimes the nuances aren't quite there. But when that applies to chatting with AI and getting advice on a social situation or a family situation, it's going to be very different than,
That's right.
and it may not land, or it may have disastrous consequences, because
That's right.
we do that here. We don't do that there, right?
Yeah. I mean, your England analysis is good. It's not Rome's not on fire if it didn't understand a bonnet versus a hood, right? So
Exactly.
but-
Or a bin versus a trash can.
Take you down one pattern. I mean, if you didn't sort of say, no, I'm talking about a bonnet in UK dialect, if you will, it will take you down a bonnet path of what an American would consider that. And then,
Exactly. It'll think you're talking about a hat. Yeah. All of a sudden you're talking about the trunk.
Pathway, and then you can remind it, and it's amazing how fast you just swing it all the way to the other side. But yeah, totally, we were wrong. This is on this side. Again, it knows the patterns of the English language.
Yeah.
It does not know facts at all. It doesn't know facts.
Let's talk about workflows for a moment. One possible workflow discussed in your article is an ECO, an engineering change order review. Yeah. How can AI help someone review an ECO more effectively without replacing human judgment?
Yeah. So one, I think the word there is review is the key word, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think as you're starting off, as you're trying to bring things into an engineering place, noting again that it does not know facts, it knows the patterns of English language. One, source documentation is really important to give. And I would be having it doing QC checking as providing another opinion than trying to have it write the ECO at first. Like, don't start with that use case. Start with it backing up the outcome or a review prior to a human getting there, as if you sort of had an assistant go off and do an initial review. And even some of the simplest things that might help out, especially diffusing internal situations, are the format's wrong from our standard ECO. Okay, that's a safe place to kind of have it cleaned up for everybody, right? It can go and add more context, and it can evaluate it against what you have sort of trained, meaning shouldn't use the word training because people think you're actually training the model. What context you have given it. As a engineering manager, that over the course of time, this is the feedback I've given on other CEOs. Here's are the related ones, and over time you can figure out how to find those related ones automatically. But start off it in a QC manner, just another set of eyes, and learn that way before you try to have it automate the full end-to-end process. And I think that goes for most things in manufacturing. Is start off a QC of an outcome, not the decision maker, not the one identifying the initial, data points outside of it. You're asking for a second opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of reliability work involves root cause analysis.
Yes.
How can AI help organize failure feedback, inspection results, customer feedback, corrective action history into a more useful investigation for us mere humans?
So one, it can in a little faster than what it would take to sort of hire an external company to come in and gather data for you. You can have it as a sort of data aggregator, not to make decisions or anything, but initially like go through all the emails about this, go through our past history, go through these customer, quality clauses, all these kind of things, and pull that together for you and aggregate it so that engineers can start to make decisions with it. So I think that's like that first case. The next part is starting to use techniques that we humans are we're just not good at always following our own standard work. Okay. And or bringing in other techniques that may be applicable to this. Okay. So having AI be something to move you through a 5 why process, having it be the asker of the questions and that you have to respond to it, not looking for it to have the solution for you, but to having it be the one that puts you through the process is a safe initial territory to be in. And again, that's also a place where you will now start to learn some of the bounds of what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, for the way that you as a company or an individual understand how to use AI appropriately and where the technology is at today. So that would be a good one. So a 5 why kind of thing, or really bring in statistical process controls that you may have, you had a class on it and your company's just not that good at using it, to really kind of bring in some of that, or automatically do the, if you're using like a, Python notebook or something like that, in order to have it keep you on process, or explore other types of troubleshooting techniques. Like, does this make more sense in an FMEA outcome afterwards or something like that? Mm-hmm. I think you're drawing on more knowledge than what is typically sitting around the table when you're going through this. But I would look at it at a process level, not at it doing the work for you. It's the facilitator of the review at first. Those are the safe places to come at.
We talk about root cause analysis as a big part of reliability. So is documentation. How can AI help with corrective action reports, customer responses, internal summaries, or technical documentation?
Yeah. Again, I'll point to the QC part of that. But what you can also start to do over time is, and you need to be, a heavier user of AI at this time. As you start to maybe program it, you can get to this place where you can start to analyze the actual disparate data points that start to form, and you can use AI to do the most recent PhD paper that came out on reliability analysis, and trying to take those actual, scientific, well, as much as scientific from a thesis paper, right? How much that's written down, and try to implement that onto your system. But you're not chatting your way there. This is using chat in order to develop systems that are actually taking your outcomes and mathematically transferring them to a different, mathematical space, and then using these other papers and implementing things where you would have classically had to go hire an entire software firm to go and try to put these two things together. You can do that in the matter of an hour or so and see if it makes sense for your business to use that technique or not. So you can start to pull those things together and make connections in a very non-obvious way, but you really got to go through the whole crawl, walk, run part. Like, and actually use these things in a language space to understand it. Because when you start to then, as a non-software developer or classical non-software developer, people can start to do these things, and they use the word vibe coding around this, but it's the idea that you kind of don't know what it's writing for you, and so you have less of a questioning attitude. Well, you should learn these things where you are the expert and can have a questioning attitude to begin with, because then you start to learn the language and the techniques for yourself that matter with the language you use, so that because you have that, you can say, no, you're incorrect, this is how we should approach it, and you should be reflecting again back on how you communicated with it through that process, and not again impose your will on it, because you're not going to change how it does math. So if you understand it there, then you can start to migrate over time to these spaces that you don't know as well, i.e. some level of software development, or in order to do that actual correlation style analysis, and not always asking AI for those kind of solutions, because again, the sycophantic nature of that will say, oh yeah, remember, correlation is not causation. And so you may find these things that make sense, and if you're really just chatting your way through it, you're going to spend your time going down rabbit holes that don't matter. So it really does come back to how you're using these things and using these new tools in a very you have to in an engineered approach to using these tools themselves, so that you're not just chatting your way there, because chatting it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in many, many ways. So it's about using the right tool for the right problem.
In your opinion, where do you think companies should be very cautious? Whether that is an implementation question or a technology question, it's up to you how you answer that, or all of it.
Yeah, I think understanding the technology is really important. But here's the one I see the most, and I'm involved with IPC GGA for their standards right now. We see a lot of people in manufacturing in particular starting to use these tools, and they realize, oh my gosh, I can take pictures of things and it can analyze it. No, it can't. You can send a picture in all day long and you can think it's telling you something. That's not what it's doing. You cannot take a picture of a defect and have it analyze that defect for you in Chat GPT. You can upload it and you can think it's doing it for you, and it can tell you it's doing it, but that's not what you should be doing. That is complete place where people will get comfortable because they think they understand the technology.
What is it doing if it's not actually analyzing?
It's really just it's not actually analyzing. It's just next word predicting effectively, except the next pixel. So can it tell the difference between a cat and a dog and things that are very ubiquitous within its training set? Yes, it can, for the most part.
Yeah, because every once in a while I'll upload an image, then request changes to it, right? And it will describe the image as man on a horse with a cowboy hat. And it was a man on a horse. But then again, a man, a horse, and a cowboy hat, it probably knows what those things look like. Or it can recognize the pixel pattern of a man, a horse, and a cowboy hat.
And even if you ask it to edit that picture, the one you get back is not the same man and the horse.
100%. 100%. I've learned that the hard way.
Recreating the image. Yeah. These, again, they're large language models. Now they have some multimodality now of being able to maybe read an image. But when we get in the manufacturing space, there is not enough training data to actually have it do that. Now, what you can do is take that image and then create the entire software system of digital analysis around that to have the outcome no different than an AOI, AVI kind of machine. Right?
Well, in the AOI world, I mean, you basically upload an image of a golden board, a perfect board, and it just spots differences, right? Oh, this component is crooked, or the polarity is the opposite direction than the one I'm comparing it to. It's just a comparative analysis, right?
That's it. That's it. And that's like the easier way to solve these hard problems has been a golden board, which has been, for the last 20 years, that's always been the AVI equivalency, right? And so AI is not magically solving that, but I do see people starting to take pictures of stuff. Oh, what's this solder defect? Like, no, do not do that. It's a sort of blinking box that people think they can put anything inside of. And so I fear those kind of things. Because without an actual strategy for your company and without actual training going on, you're going to have somebody on the floor or manager or even the CEO themselves trying to start to do some of this stuff. And be like, well, we're teaching all of our people. Okay, so the guy on third shift now that actually has a defect, and now they're sort of giving up some of their agency to AI, now says, well, before I would have called my manager on this, but you know what? I don't want to wake them up at 2:00 in the morning, so I'll just take the picture. No, it's good enough, and then you ship it. You know, that is where I fear a lot of manufacturers and the people that are just running towards these things without guardrails on at all, or lack of or actually education and understanding, which takes months. But the good news is that it is a skill set, is a capability you're building it within the company for the long term. It's not a one and done, and nor really is there light at the end of the tunnel, because this stuff changes every day.
Right, probably changed since we started talking about 50 minutes ago.
I'm sure Fable 5 or something's back out. So that's where I get very concerned with manufacturers and the blind leading the blind situation that is going on everywhere. And, again, even in some standards committees, I had to go in there and be the one that say, time out. Like, what are we telling people we can do with this technology? Because it's not chatting your way there. Again, you would use actual image analysis techniques. And the cool thing is, at least for the golden board kind of situations, can we maybe not have to do golden board? Maybe, but now we get to run that experiment 100,000 times in all different ways in order to figure it out. When you're taking a picture of something and you're chatting with your AI, you are not changing the model. People think I'm training the model. You're not training the model. Like
Sam Altman's not going, oh man, we got to document this engineering change here, right? We're not changing it. Mike and Sean aren't changing Anthropic or OpenAI or whoever.
No. You're just one other little small percentage of an average. Yeah. And local models don't necessarily get you there either. And training a model isn't necessarily the way to do it either. I think in many cases, our classical approaches to these things, where there's deterministic outcomes, are probably the best approach. But you are making that more democratized, available to anyone that wants to choose and actually engage with this. You could make your own AOI machine. I'm not saying it's easy, but you can do it. And any individual over the course of time could do that with the right equipment, and you could work with AI in order to spec it all out and do those kind of things. So yeah, you can. It takes a long time to kind of be that good, but over time, almost everybody should be capable of doing something like that. And that's where sort of the cost of knowledge and technology is rapidly plummeted towards zero. Now it's really about creativity and curiosity, systems thinking for individuals. And it does not take a technical or non-technical person, is not a deciding factor on whether you will use AI in a advantageous way. It's really curiosity and creativity, which are very human things.
We're almost out of time, so just a couple more questions. For a company in electronics manufacturing, that's the space most of my audience is in, to get started with AI, what's the best first step? One practical AI habit, one workflow, or one trigger they could implement tomorrow. And I mean tomorrow facetiously. That's just a broad statement. But what can they implement quickly that would be a good first step? Not final delivery, obviously, but a good first step.
A good first step is, one, there is this level of governance everybody needs to understand. That I think if a company is going to start to give access to people, you should give access to everyone in a paid version side. If not, people will use these tools in the non-paid version. And while you're not directly training that model, you are giving up company information and customer information to free systems. And it's, this is not new to AI. And I think a lot of companies are kind of naive still, thinking that their people don't use the tools that are available when they're told, no, you can't use them with the company. If there's a value to a tool, they're going to use it. And now now they're going around the system. So you might as well at least enable that system. So that's one. You think access is important. Next is sort of what you give it access to. And the easy one for a lot of companies, people tend to record meetings now, which is great. If you are not taking the transcript and using AI with that transcript, then it's like you have AI at the table. So I do see this habit of people starting to, because you can automate the recording, and there's some things out there that will automatically extract the action items and all that kind of stuff, but that's not bespoke for your company. I think it's important to take the transcript and actually do something with it. and maybe even instead of the whole action item and all that kind of stuff, instead ask like, this is the whole discussion. Like what other angles did we not discuss around at the round table? What are our blind side? Play devil's advocate to this, situation, and kind of using it to just have another look at it. So you actually have this extra seat at the table and are truly asking for something. So I think that's a good first use case. We often see a lot of blocking that happens again without the Take the Hill campaign, these sort of delegations of where the IT organizations don't understand AI enough yet, and what the security aspects of these things are, and really what systems we should be using and all that. And so it's easy to say, hey, let's, you can connect it to your email, and there's absolutely safe ways to do this. But you sort of have these internal blockers that don't know what they don't know as well. It's truly the whole world. There's no experts in AI. I can kind of say that. If anybody purports to be an expert, they're probably not an expert, because they know enough to know that there's so much more out there. And so, it's really important that everybody in the senior leadership in particular actually learn the technology so they can be useful in their own day to day. And then they can start to come up with a plan of how to sort of create initial champions within the field. And how do you do that? Through education, and then connecting those dots of, okay, let's at least connect our email and get a sort of a broad 10% uplift that everybody can use it for. And then start to analyze things across the board, right? You can say, you talked about onboarding a little bit a while ago. We have companies that now create an onboarding packet, the one they never had time to ever write, and they get this awesome, this is how we do things, and some tribal knowledge, if you will, starting to get finally documented. And I'm like, great, now let's look at that and have it make a flow chart of your diagram of what you think the actual workflow is. And, you'll pay consultants, $20,000 just to get a bunch of sticky notes up on the board to start a lean exercise. Now you can do it from the actual documentation. But the interesting thing I find is, great, now that that's what you think you do, I want you, and you can have IT do this, point that at your entire history of your email servers, and let's see if that's what you're really doing.
Wow. Yeah.
And
look for evidence of it, or lack thereof.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not just this, generate the email, draft the email, all that kind of stuff. It's, what am I doing where I'm inefficient, and using it really as a thought partner in that manner. And you can kind of start to do some help lean analysis, all that and whatnot, where you're not asking it for the mathematical outcomes, you're asking it to be that coach and mentor and guide.
Interesting. I believe your company is CrossGen AI.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Where does CrossGen? What is that? Is that like cross-generational? What does that mean? Oh, it is cross-generational. Okay, cross-generation. Cross-generation AI. What does your company do? Who does it do it for? Why does it do it?
Sure. Well, the why is because I've been a senior leader in sort of corporate America for long enough, and small. Like I've been in family-backed PE and public companies as well. Anywhere from teams of 20 people to 15,000 was my largest organization. And it really does come down to, we have never done these adoptions correctly. And what I've always seen is that we just fail to educate. We fail to educate leaders how to be good leaders in the first place. And now you have this other technology that requires good leadership. And not to say all leaders are poor or anything, it's just they're blind spots to us because we're maybe focused on the wrong things sometimes. And so we are educators first and net accelerators. That is a reverse to what is normally out there. And that is, tell me your AI problems or where you think AI can be solved. I'll go build it for you. I'll give it back to you. That's a classical software,
That's a relationship. Yeah, conventional relationship.
Yes. Instead, you have no idea what you're buying. So let me make you an informed buyer at first. Okay. Because the best people with these tools are the more senior you are. Okay. So arguably the more gray hair you have, because it's now this tool to help solve a bunch of problems in a totally different manner that you've been trying to do for your whole career. And with more expertise, you have a better questioning attitude, and you also know really good problems to go solve. The younger generation doesn't really know the problems to go solve, but they're way more open to change. And so I try to blend those two worlds together, hence the cross-generational aspect of it. So we educate, and through that education process, which requires homework and whatnot, we go down the pathway of the things that people start to ask, what questions they're starting to use these systems for, and then we help accelerate those projects. The very same project you would have contracted a company for, but you would have gotten one of them, and you would have paid $200,000 or whatever for this one product. And you're sort of buying your way there. And now you have this vaporware that's just going to sit there. Nobody's going to use it because they don't understand it. They're not trained to it. And now if it truly has AI really within it, not just built with AI, you now don't even really understand what it's doing. And you're just going to wind up in the same situation again with vaporware. Now, that exact same piece of software over the course of 12 weeks is probably the thing that the very people that were going to use that other one and not paying attention to it would start to develop themselves because it's the right thing to do. Except this is Trojan horse to building rapport over 12 weeks with us and then saying, hey, well, let me have my guy just sit with you. He'll help you because it's going to take you another year and a half to figure out the rest of this. But now it's something that they started. It was their idea. And the adoption of that is much larger.
Yeah.
That's one. Two, you also have democratized that solutioning. If you take 10 and 12 people and have them all work on it, you're now getting 12, maybe 4x that in terms of, like, say, 50 solutions and at any one time versus one solution that we had to talk with each other every day for an hour a day for 3 weeks just for you to communicate a problem that I don't understand, for me to go solve that. And, the best person to solve the problem is the person with the problem.
Yeah.
And we aim to give those tools. And over the course of time, we accelerate, and then eventually we partner with local AI and become an actual member of your team. But people don't know what that looks like. And so that's why we do education first.
One step at a time. Yeah. Excellent.
Exactly.
Well, for my audience that wants to get more information on CrossGen AI, the URL will be there. If you're watching this on YouTube, right down here below me, it says see more. Click that and you'll get links to CrossGen AI. And for those who are listening, you can look at your podcast app and look at the show notes on that app, and that information will be there. It's crossgen-ai.com. crossgen-ai.com. But that information will also be in the show notes. Sean Patterson, CrossGen AI, thank you for enlightening me. I want you to be my go-to, call back regularly expert on all things AI relative to this industry.
Absolutely. We can even do some little demos next time or something like that.
All right. Well, audience, you heard it here first. Anytime I hear some outrageous claim, I'm just going to reach out to Sean, and he can be our internal show mythbuster or confirmer.
Yeah, you go.
You never
That's
know.
a good one.
Right? Well, Sean, thanks for the generosity of your time. Thanks for sharing your expertise with me and my audience. I really appreciate it. I think I and my audience are always fascinated when we hear conversations about AI relative to the industry we work in. And I think we are all anxiously awaiting, with bated breath, everything that we think AI can do and actually have it done. But I think that you did a really good job at not being negative at all, but kind of qualifying our expectations a little bit.
Yes.
And setting more realistic expectations as to what's possible, at least today. By the time you have on the show again, you're going to go, okay, everything I just said on the last episode, scrub it because it's all changed, right? But
True.
But that's the nature of evolution, right? And as we said at the very beginning of the episode, this evolution is happening at a record pace, probably faster than any other adoption I can think of in my 65 years on this planet. And everything I've read before that, this is happening so fast. And personally, I think it's very exciting. And yes, it has torrid applications, but so does the internet, so does electricity, so does the automobile. I mean, there are bad sides to all these things, but overwhelmingly, I think it's a lot of positive possibility, and it will make humankind way more, at the end of the day, way more productive than we are now. And for those that believe it's the end of all jobs, no, I don't believe that. I believe when Henry Ford came out with the Model T, it was a bad time to be a blacksmith, but clearly there were other things to do. And I think instead of thinking, there go all the jobs, I'm thinking, look at how all those jobs can be even more productive. What I see is that it's going to be a positive increase on mankind's inventions and ingenuity and efficiency and optimization and all of those things. Not to mention in the medical world, where, it may or may not cure cancer, but it will certainly lead to the facts that will allow humans to get to that point and help organize teraflops worth of data that we've been collecting over the very beginning of time, from which time doctors wrote in scrolls, it'll be able to do what no human can do, which is analyze it all in a very short period of time and draw correlations and things like that humans can hypothesize what the causation is based on all the correlations. And anyway, I am definitely a proponent of the possibilities of this tech. And as amazing as the real story is, we tend to just keep piling on all the other things that aren't quite real at this point yet. So I think the need for someone like yourself who knows what the real limits are and knows what the really hopeful limits are is very good for companies to be able to bounce a reality check off of someone like yourself. So thanks for being here. Thanks for reality checking in front of us, and I appreciate all the time you've given.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
All right, here are some final thoughts. There's no shortage of excitement around artificial intelligence right now. Some of that excitement is justified, and some is probably overblown. But as we discussed today, the real question isn't whether AI is impressive. The real question is whether it can become useful. And in electronics manufacturing, useful has a very specific meaning. Useful means helping us make better decisions. Useful means helping us document more clearly. Useful means helping us recognize patterns, organize information, support troubleshooting, and reduce the chance that important details get missed. Useful means strengthening the behaviors and processes that lead to more reliable products. But none of that happens just because a company buys an AI tool or sends a team to a training session. Tools don't change outcomes unless people actually use them. And people don't use them consistently unless they become part of the daily workflow. That's why Sean's point about triggers and habits is so important. If AI is only something we experiment with once in a while, it remains a novelty. But if it becomes something we use when preparing for meetings, reviewing ECOs, analyzing defects, organizing root cause investigations, drafting corrective actions, or capturing tribal knowledge, then it starts to become part of the process. And process matters. In our industry, reliability is built on repeatability, discipline, verification, and sound judgment. AI doesn't replace any of those things. It doesn't replace the engineer, the process expert, the quality manager, or the reliability professional. But used responsibly, it may help those people work more effectively. So maybe the conversation from today's conversation is quite simple. Don't start by asking how AI can transform everything. Start by asking where it can help with one task, one workflow, one recurring problem. Build the habit, test the value, verify the output, then build from there. Because in the end, reliability is rarely the result of one big dramatic change. More often, it's the result of many small, disciplined actions done consistently over time. And perhaps that's exactly where AI can help, not by replacing reliability thinking, but by helping us practice it more consistently. Now, that's a wrap on this episode of Reliability Matters. Thanks for being here. Whether you listened on your favorite podcast app or watched on YouTube, I really appreciate you being here. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes. And a big thanks to PCB Chat from the Printed Circuit Engineering Association at pcbchat.com and Ascendo Reliability at reliability.fm for syndicating this show. Got a question or an idea for a future episode? Of course, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reliabilitymatterspodcast.com. Once again, thanks for being here. I truly appreciate all of you. Until next time, keep learning, keep doing it right, and remember, reliability matters. And I'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to the Reliability Matters podcast. Join us on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month for new episodes of Reliability Matters.